Hello and welcome to our discussion today. We want to quickly look at developing leaders and emotional intelligence. In our discussions today, in our discussion, we'll be looking at the continuous nature of leadership development. We'll be looking at the models of leadership training. Then we'll differentiate between mentoring and coaching. We'll describe the role of self-awareness in leadership. We'll define emotional intelligence and its concepts, and then we'll explore some tools for assessing emotional intelligence. And then we'll look at the need for lifelong learning in leadership. Right. So from all that we have done so far, right, you realize that leadership has progressed. The study of leadership has progressed. And now you realize that leadership is no more innate, it's no more inherent, but it evolves through education as people grow, as people experience new environments, and as people go through new situations, they become better leaders. So leadership evolves through education, through experience, and through self-reflection. All right. So we've moved beyond the concept where we say that leadership is inherent or leadership is innate or leaders are born to a level where leadership is actually developed through education, through experience, and through self-reflection. Okay, so because of these new concepts of leadership, that leadership evolves over time as people get educated and as they go through experiences and as they reflect on themselves, you realize that in recent times, it has become very important to have leaders who are emotionally intelligent, all right, in the workplace or in the organization within which you work. It is very important that leaders become emotionally intelligent. And we'll look at what it means to be an emotionally intelligent leader as we go through the lecture. Okay, so organizations require emotionally intelligent leaders. And to develop this, all right, it is not just one dimensional. It's not just developing yourself in only one area. It is multidimensional, or it has different aspects. So their development can be through formal education, like we have said, right? It can also be through experience, and this experience is what you get from your daily interactions with people. So based on how you have been able to interact with your followers over the period, as an individual, you are able to build experience, and that adds on to your leadership development journey. Okay, so leadership is not innate, it evolves and is developed over time through education, through experience, and through self reflection, right? So before leadership was seen as a concept that can be developed and that can be learned, it was seen as an inherent quality. Okay. And the focus was on technical and strategic skills. Okay. So when leadership was thought to be inherent, the focus was on technical and strategic skills. The focus was on what the individual could do. All right. But in recent times, you realize that the focus of leadership is more on how the leader is able to manage his or her emotions, right? As well as manage the emotions of his followers, all right, how he's able to manage their thought process, the psychological behavior of his followers as well as of himself, as well as his social competencies. Okay, so in recent times, leadership focuses more on emotional, on psychological, and social competencies. You realize that in addition to the technical and strategic skills, there is the need for emotional competencies, you have psychological competencies, and then social competencies, right? And the leader's effectiveness is measured not by just what he can do physically, all right, or we call it the output, not just what is seen out of the skill that the leader possesses or the technical expertise that that leader has, but also the fact that they are able to influence the followers, they are able to inspire the followers, right? That leader's ability to have empathy on his followers, right? And also be resilient in times of challenges. Those are the ways you measure a leader's effectiveness in recent times. Okay, so that person's ability to influence, right? His ability to show empathy, and also the ability to be resilient in difficulty, right? So we look at the leadership training models. How are leaders developed? Okay, and there are several ways that leaders are developed. The first one is the situational leadership model. And like we have already learned, what this means is that with the situational leadership, the leader tends to adapt his leadership style to the followers' maturity. So, depending on the level of maturity of the follower, the leader is able to maneuver through and be dynamic with his style. Okay, so for a follower who knows what to do, when to do it, you realize that the leader would not have to be very autocratic, or the leader would not have to be leading with a directive, okay, style. Because that person knows what he has to do, the leader sits back and then offers guidance as and when it's necessary. So, with the situational leadership model, leaders are developed in a way that they adapt their style to the followers' maturity, right? Then you have the transformational leadership model, which inspires and motivates teams through models. We have looked at these. So, what this means is that if a leader is adopting the transformational leadership model, what he has to do is to focus on inspiring and motivating the teams that he is leading or that she is leading. Okay, so it focuses on inspiration and motivation of team members through the vision that has been set by the leader or by top management, right? Then you have action-centered leadership. This balances the task that has to be performed, the individuals who have to perform the tasks, as well as the teams that have to perform the task. So you realize that this focuses on the work to be done and the people who are performing the work. Okay. So you realize that for these models to be whole, or for these models to be able to function well, it is important that they are integrated with effective communication, strategic thinking, and ethics, right? And it's also important that you blend the concepts or the theory, all right, with what is actually happening. Like we have already said, sometimes with some situations, you realize that they are not planned for. And so when they come up, there are concepts that can help you to maneuver through. But in applying those concepts, you also have to check what is happening on the ground, okay? What is happening practically, the environment within which you find yourself, the people that you are working with, okay? And also the resources that are available to you, all right? And then based on all of this, you are able to develop leaders in a way that is effective, right? So it is important that as leaders are being developed, depending on which model that is being used, that you integrate with effective communication, right? That the leaders know how to communicate. They should be able to think strategically, all right? Think for the long term, be able to plan for the long term, and then also involve ethics in the work that they do. So there are various ways that leaders are developed. We can look at first mentoring and coaching, right? Mentoring is a long-term relational guidance by experienced individuals. So you have someone who has been in a position or in a leadership position for a while, okay, and has acquired some years of experience. If such a person guides a younger person or someone who is less experienced in the same field, right, then we call it mentoring. So it means that person, the experienced individual, is offering guidance to the non-experienced individual. And this is not a short-term thing. It happens over a long-term period. Okay, it happens over a long time, or it happens over a long duration where the experienced person offers mentoring. Then you have coaching. Coaching, on the other hand, is short term. So whilst mentoring is long term, coaching is short term. And coaching is specific to a particular goal. Okay. And most of the times, coaching is led by a professional. So, someone who is qualified in a particular field offers coaching based on the need at a particular time. Okay. Once that need is met, or once that objective is met, then the coaching session has ended. However, mentoring is long term and it's most of the times guided by experienced individuals. So, coaching short term, mentoring is long term. And these come with some benefits, okay? And the benefits of coaching and mentoring is that you get to receive real-time feedback. Okay, so the mentee or whoever is being coached gets to receive real-time feedback. So as they work or as they go through their leadership journey, if they need feedback on any activity or any task that has been assigned, you realize that the mentor or the coach gets to give real-time feedback so that the leader is able to improve on his skills and become better at what they are doing. All right. It also gives room for self-reflection. Another benefit is self-reflection, where based on the feedback that the mentor or the coach gives the aspiring leader, they are able to also sit down and reflect. They're able to sit and reflect on the actions that they have taken, on the responses of the followers that they are leading, and also on the outcomes of the decisions that they made. All right. So the benefits of coaching includes real-time feedback, self-reflection, and then navigating organizational culture. Right. So for example, if someone has been employed fresh into the system or into the organization, and they are offered mentoring and coaching, or they are taken through the what goes on in the organization by either a mentor or a coach, it helps such people to be able to navigate the culture of the organization easily. All right. And this is better or much easier than if they were left on their own. Okay, so these are some of the benefits of mentoring and coaching. So in developing leaders, one can decide to either mentor or coach the individual. All right. And organizations that promote these approaches nurture sustainable leadership pipelines. Why? Because at every point in time, you have experienced individuals who are mentoring the new leaders that are coming up, or you have professionals who are coaching the young people in the organization. And the notion is that because the young ones are being coached or mentored, they will also develop into leaders. And over time, they will also qualify to mentor or coach other employees in the organization. So it becomes a sustainable leadership pipeline. Okay, so you never run out of leaders. At every point in time, a mentee is being mentored by an experienced individual or is receiving coaching from a professional, right? Then we look at self-awareness. What is the role of self-awareness in developing leaders? If you say self-awareness, it simply means understanding your own emotions. So as a leader, you are self-aware if you understand your emotions, you understand your values, you understand your strengths, and how these affect other people, right? So self-awareness is understanding one's emotions, values, strengths, and how one's behavior impacts others. Okay, so you are self-aware if you know how your behavior or how your emotions and how the beliefs you have or the values you have affect other people, right? And there are several ways to become self-aware as an individual. One of the ways is to journal, all right? Take stock or write down all there is to know about you. So what are some of the emotions you feel? All right. Journal them, write them down, your values, your strengths. And then you think through how these affect other people. All right. You may not know this thoroughly. However, you realize that from time to time, as you interact with people, they tell you how they feel about you, what they do not like about you. All right. And as they give you this information or the negative feelings they have about you, or even the positive feelings they have about you, you can journal them. And that will give you a fair idea of how people feel when you behave in a particular way, right? Then there's also the 360-degree feedback. This is a technique where you get to receive feedback from all from everyone who works with you. So you can have feedback from your supervisors, you have feedback from your subordinates, feedback from colleagues at the same level. You can have feedback from your customers, if you have any, feedback from your suppliers, right? Feedback from anyone who has some connection with you. Okay. And all of these help to make you know your status, or it gets you to be self-aware, right? And it makes you know how your behavior affects the people that you work with. Another technique is the personality assessment. Every individual aligns with some personality traits. Okay, so if you want to be self-aware, then it is important that you go through the personality assessments, get to know which personality trait you have, okay, or where you align with the most, and then you are able to check the strengths and weaknesses of those personality traits, and that helps you to become self-aware. And the final technique here is mindfulness. Mindfulness requires you to always be present, okay? Be in the present. So know what is happening around you at every point in time, okay? Check the feelings of people at every point in time, because a comment that will make someone happy today may not necessarily make that person happy tomorrow when you pass that same comment. Okay, so it is important to be mindful and live in the present, right? And you realize that if a leader becomes self-aware, then it helps them to lead authentically. It helps them to lead with truism. You get to not fake the leadership, right? But you lead people authentically, you lead people ethically, and then you realize that the people who are following you actually trust in your leadership, right? That takes us to emotional intelligence, right? If we say emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive to understand, manage, and use your emotions effectively, right? So an individual's ability to be able to perceive, to understand, manage, and use emotions effectively is what you call emotional intelligence. And there are components of emotional intelligence. You have self-awareness, which we have already discussed, okay, in the previous slide. Then you have self-regulation, which requires you to control your emotions, okay, and not be overboard, to be able to regulate your own emotions. Then you have motivation, okay, the ability to be able to keep yourself motivated. You don't need people from external sources to motivate you. You should be able to motivate yourself. The other component of emotional intelligence is empathy. All right. Feel for people, put yourself in the shoes of people and get to feel what they feel. And then you have social skills. So so if you are opening door, you have to do crook, 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 crook. Social skills require that as a leader, you are able to mingle with the people, get to be relational, right? You should be able to relate well with everybody, right? It doesn't matter what level, you should be able to relate, whether subordinates, supervisors, you should be able to relate with everybody. So you should have relational skills. That's also another name for the social skills. All right. So we look at empathy and emotional regulation, right? Empathy is the ability to emotionally connect and understand people, understand the diverse perspectives that there are. Okay. Understand that people will not necessarily agree with you every time on every issue. So in times when people disagree, it's important that the leader understands their perspective, okay, and responds appropriately. If followers feel a particular way, the leader has to be able to understand why they are feeling that way and get to be able to respond appropriately. That is empathy. So it's like putting yourself in the shoes of the others and feel the way they are feeling. All right. That is how you'll be able to respond appropriately. And then we look at emotional regulation. That is controlling your own emotions, okay? And ensuring that you are able to stay calm, even when things around you don't seem to look calm, or even when there's still a lot of pressure around you, you are able to stay calm, all right? And then manage emotional impulses, right? Sometimes you get angry just like that out of the blue, and then he's angry out of the blue, and then she's angry. It's important that you manage the emotional impulses, and then as much as possible you go through the modeling of composure. So try to train yourself on how to be calm, or how to remain composed even when the conditions around are not favorable. Okay, so in that way, you are learning to control your own emotions, or you're learning to regulate your own emotions, right? So leaders with a high emotional intelligence are able to handle conflicts effectively. They're able to build inclusive and motivated teams. And then they are also able to foster psychological safety. And so in modern times, it is very important that as a leader, you become emotionally intelligent. And there are several tools that are used to assess emotional intelligence. You have the emotional competence inventory, right? You have the Myers-Salovey Caruso emotional intelligence test, and then you have the emotional quotient inventory. So in our activity for today, I want you to have a look at how these instruments are applied. Okay, so that's your activity for today. So you realize that the instruments are used in coaching and performance reviews, as well as leadership development plans. So in organizations that want to develop leaders, these are the instruments that they use. Okay, so you have the ECI, you have the MSCEIT, and then the EQI. All right, these are instruments that are used. So we'll discuss this in class as an activity. And these also help to identify strengths and areas for growth in emotional development, or in developing emotional intelligence. So it helps, the tools help to identify areas of strength and also areas that that individual has to grow in. All right. There's also the concept of lifelong learning in leadership. Okay, so what this means is that in leadership development, it's not like formal education where you say, I have completed and so I am done. It's not like that. Leadership development is a lifelong learning, right? And it's a continuous journey. It's not a one-time event. It happens over time. All right. And so, as an individual who is a leader, or you're aspiring to be a leader, it's important to note that you are going to be learning for life. Okay, the journey of leadership is a lifelong journey, and so to become a lifelong learner, you have to have some characteristics. Okay, you should be curious, get to know, or you should be eager to know what is happening. All right, you should be able to adapt to new things. You should be open to feedback. All right, because to be self-aware, you need feedback from people. And not every feedback you get will be positive. There are going to be negative feedbacks. So it's important that you are open to feedback, whether positive or negative, and be ready to change. All right. Be ready to adapt to new situations. And then, in cases where the change cannot be done easily by yourself, it is important to seek professional development. So, from time to time, as a lifelong learner in leadership, you should be able to attend conferences, you should be able to attend workshops, you should be able to read what is happening around the world, what is happening in other organizations, how people in your own position are going about their duties as leaders. Okay. And this lifelong learning concept is very essential because in today's world, you have environments that are not always serene, or they are not always calm. There are times that you are going to be in an environment that is volatile, you have uncertainty, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of ambiguity. Okay. So in today's, we call it the VUCA world, where you have volatility, uncertainty, complexities, and ambiguities, it's important that you remain a lifelong learner in leadership. What this means is that after going through this course, that is not the end of it. Your whole lifetime as an individual should be a journey of learning the concepts and the practices of leadership, right? So what we have been discussing today essentially is that in developing leaders, it is holistic, okay? And it must include, together with the technical skills and the hard skills that people have, you should also have emotional growth, or you should have emotional intelligence, or you should have emotional growth. Okay. And leadership training, mentorship, and self awareness are foundational. You cannot do without them as a leader. It's important to go through the training, it's important to be developed, it's important to have a mentor or a coach, and it is important to be self aware. All right. And in modern leadership, to succeed, you need emotional intelligence. You cannot do without emotional intelligence in modern leadership. And then finally, we looked at the assessment tools and the fact that it's important to remain a lifelong learner. Keep that mindset as a leadership student, that you are a lifelong learner in this leadership journey. Okay. So for our activity, like I said earlier, you are to describe how each of the three tools for evaluating EI in the lecture is applied. Okay, so we looked at some tools for evaluating emotional intelligence. I want you to describe how each of the tools function. This is an individual assignment. So you do it and submit to my email. We will discuss this in class. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you shortly.